Hey everyone, it's Lexie. So in today's video I'll be sharing with you my chilling Halloween reading recommendations. So these are books that either have like an eerie feeling to them or something kind of just totally gets that spooky atmosphere to them. So I'm not a big Halloween person, but I always think it's fun to have kind of like these atmospheric kind of haunting reads around fall time. I think it totally captures kind of this time of year. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. So starting out, I have Year One by Nora Roberts, and this is the first book in the Chronicles of One trilogy, and this is a series that I fell in love with. It's very much outside of my comfort zone, but I feel like I really, surprise myself with it. So basically the premise of the story, it takes place in modern day, and there is kind of this virus infection that is going around, kind of wiping out 2/3 of the world's population within a matter of weeks. Sounds familiar, but it has a very similar plot to kind of what's going on now, but there is a fantastical element in here. So this plague or virus was caused by the release of dark magic, and those who are immune to kind of this disorder are those who have some sort of magic in them, whether they are kind of have elf, wizard in them. Like it's kind of like there's a hierarchy, and so this kind of leads to anarchy, as you can tell. And it kind of the main kind of like themes in here is good versus evil, white versus black kind of powers. And the first book is really kind of setting up the world in this kind of post pandemic world, and just the structures with the people who are magics, have magic in them, and those who are just kind of normal humans. And this one really sets up the world. The second one is where it really kind of gets into kind of how do we like solve the problems, but the first one is a very good introduction into this world. I read the last book, I think it came out last November, and so I fell in love with it. Like I said, it was very much stepping outside my comfort zone, but this has quickly become one of my favorite fantasy trilogies of all time. And if you are able to kind of draw parallels to what's going on now, I think it also makes it more realistic, even though there's a magical aspect in this pandemic. But it's a lot of fun. It's super creepy. There is a thing with like crows, and just the imagery of it is super creepy, and just kind of living in that world as we kind of were and still are, I think makes it hit more home, hits home harder, and just kind of, yeah, it's a lot of fun. So if you're looking to step outside your comfort zone and try something new, I highly recommend you check this trilogy out. This is a book that I read like 5 or 6 years ago, and I think it's my favorite out of this author's, and it is Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. And this is a book that follows a woman whose entire family was murdered in the middle of the night, and she was the lone survivor, and she testified in court saying that it was her brother who was the murderer. And so she's approached 20 years after the fact by this journalist who thinks that her brother is innocent. So as she is kind of struggling with kind of reliving her past, we get flashbacks to the events leading up to that brutal murder. And this one is super creepy. It's super dark and twisted. I remember just being totally engrossed with this book, and just, yeah, it's really creepy. I think like you just need to go into this and just experience it for yourself. Like it just has that total, like, you like have that sense of dread, and you're like, like the family's eventually going to be murdered, and you're just kind of waiting for it, and you're picking up on the subtle clues of what's going to happen and trying to piece together the events of that night. And it's just really well done. Like I said, this is my favorite out of Gillian Flynn's like 3 books that she's written. It's just super creepy, and like that cover is so creepy as well. So yeah, if you want to try something a little bit creepy and spooky around Halloween, this is the book you need to read. Next, I have The Winter People by Jennifer McMahon, and this is a book I do have on my shelf, but it's on the top shelf, and I found out recently that I have a dislocated rib, so I can't really stretch up to reach it. So you guys just get the picture over on this one. But basically the premise of this, and it follows this family that moves into this very old house, and there is something kind of off about this house. It has a history where this mother did like a murder suicide with her daughter, and so it's been kind of like haunted ever since. And so when this girl's mother goes missing, she kind of delves into the kind of history of this house and how it ties in. There is kind of a folklore in this kind of forest town that there's the winter people who are dead that haven't crossed over, that kind of just wander the forest, and ties in with this. And it has like such a creepy supernatural feel to it, and just like that cold, you know how it's like if you're in like the middle of a forest in winter and it's just like silent, like that's like the feeling you get. And it just kind of like your brain's like screaming like something's off. And there's this woman who's described as having kind of like a fox face, and she kind of lurks in the shadows of the forest, and it's just super creepy. Like it's very different than what I tend to read, but oh man, this book was so intense. Not something I tend to really read, but I really enjoyed it, and it definitely got my heart rate moving. So next, this is a book this is one of the few books that I actually enjoyed reading in high school, and it is Devil in the White City by Erik Larson. And this book has as it's a National Book Award finalist, so it's very well done, and it's a non-fiction book, and it talks about the World Fair that took place in Chicago towards the end of the 1800s. And while we kind of get the history of how the fair was being built, and just, you know, how unprepared they were to open to the world, basically, we follow this serial killer who is deemed to be the first like serial killer in America, and he used these fairgrounds as a way to lure and murder women. And so we kind of get the dual storylines of not only the fair being built, but also of the serial killer as he is like growing up and eventually using this platform to murder and torture women. And so even though this is a non-fiction read, it doesn't read like a textbook. It's very much kind of narration style kind of writing. It's not dry. It's super suspenseful, creepy. Like I said, I read this, oh my goodness, it even has like annotations. Like this is like one of the few books that I actually enjoyed in high school. And yeah, it's super suspenseful, super creepy, and just kind of like how all this was going on when Chicago was on like the world stage. It was super interesting. So if, like I said, if you are like hesitant about trying to read nonfiction, this wasn't a good one to start, because it's not like overwhelmingly like a textbook, and he does a good job at incorporating like references. Like this is basically all references in the back, like diary entries. Like it's really well done. So I cannot recommend this book enough. And lastly, I have The Shape of Night by Tess Garretson. This is a book that came out a couple years ago, and I'm a huge fan of Tess Garretson. I've read almost all her books, and I just love her Rosolian Isles series. And this one is a little bit different than her previous works, but it follows this woman who's just trying to escape her life in Boston. So she ends up renting this very old lighthouse on the coast of Maine, and while she's there, there's some like mysterious supernatural things going on. She thinks she sees the ghost of the man who used to live here at this house who died at sea, and so there's kind of like this kind of murder mystery kind of going on as well. Like I said, it's very different than what I tend to read, but it was just really fun. There's kind of a romance story in here as well, and it's just super creepy, just that supernatural aspect and how she draws out that anticipation, and just like that lighthouse ghost kind of feeling is just really creepy, and just being in an old house with a lot of secrets as well. So like I said, a lot of these books were me stepping outside my comfort zone, and I was always like pleasantly surprised by them. So I think you guys will enjoy these too, and I think because these are kind of creepy and chilling, I think they'll be perfect to read around Halloween time. So that's it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below if you have any chilling Halloween reading recommendations and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.